So tonight, as I was going about my usual making things, I thought that I would do a little video tutorial for you. I'm going to be making a general healing salve, which is really good for dry skin, eczema, psoriasis, cuts, bruises, scrapes, anything like that. So to start, we've got our ingredients. We've got some organic jojoba oil, as well as some organic solid coconut oil. We've got grated beeswax, vitamin E oil, and then a few different essential oils. Typically online you'll find many different recipes for making creams and salves and things like that. There are lots of different ways to do it. I will show you how I do it today. I typically do not measure ingredients that much. I kind of use what looks like is about right. But for the sake of this video, I will kind of talk you through about how much I'm using. So the first thing I've done here is set up kind of a double boiler. I have a saucepan with some hot water in it, and then in that I've got a glass measuring cup. If you're going to be making things like this, I recommend that you have separate measuring cups, graters, spoons, all of that stuff for these products, because we are using beeswax and we don't want beeswax in our food. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to heat up some jojoba oil. And I'm just looking in there. It looks like it's about a third of a cup. We're going to add just a splash more because we want to make two batches of this salve today. Sorry about that. I just dropped the lid from the oil, which I'm going to put back on. I've got the burner still on because the water is heating up. Once it's at the temperature where it starts to melt things, I will turn the burner off and just leave my measuring cup in the hot water. I'm also going to add about this much. This is a soup spoon, kind of for measuring purposes. This much coconut oil, which I'm just going to drop right into the jojoba oil so that it can start to heat up. Now, to mix this, I'm using a bamboo skewer. I found these at the dollar store, 50 of them for $1. Again, if you're going to use a washable stirring item, you want to make sure that you use something that you're not going to be using with food. I bought these skewers because I thought they were handy and I could throw them out when I was finished with them, and they're also environmentally friendly. So while that's melting, we'll turn off the burner now because we've got the appropriate amount of heat. We are going to add a little bit of vitamin E oil. Vitamin E oil is really good for healing and moisturizing because it is something that our body needs. So I'm just going to drizzle a bit in there. You don't need too much. A little bit really goes a long way with vitamin E oil. So we'll just put that in there. Now, while we're waiting for this to melt, we can take a look at the beeswax. I have grated the beeswax with a fairly coarse grater. You don't need to grate it particularly fine. However, as is the case with the measuring cup and everything else, you want to make sure that you're using a separate grater for beeswax because it's really difficult to clean and you don't want beeswax in your food. So we're just going to have a look here. We see the coconut oil is melting together nicely with the vitamin E oil and the jojoba oil. It's looking really nice. It's got a really beautiful golden color. That's from the jojoba oil. Once this is all melted, we will add beeswax, and again, it's a matter of adding, I'll show you roughly how much to add, but it'll just be kind of, see, I've grated this, we've got probably about a half a cup of beeswax there. I'm going to start with a heaping little bunch, which I will then stir into the oils. We're going to keep stirring it until it's melted, and then we'll take a look and see if we need to add some more. With these salves, it depends on what you like. Some people like them to be quite firm. Other people prefer something softer. Personally, I tend to put in as much beeswax as I think will create something firm that's not going to leak in my purse. It's also important to make sure that there's enough in there to hold together with the oils so that the oils don't separate out, because that can be quite messy. Now, if you find that you've got your salve is either too thick or it's too thin, of course you can always stick it back into the measuring cup, melt it down, and then either add some more oil if it's too hard, or add some more beeswax if you think it's too soft and you'd like it to be firmer. So we're just going to keep stirring the beeswax here. It does take a little bit to melt. Beeswax can be quite, even when it's grated, it does need to a little bit of time. So I've turned the heat back on to heat the oil a little bit more. As you'll see, there's little chunks of beeswax still floating around, but you want to keep stirring until it's melted in and has the same consistency as the rest of the oil. Now, as you can see, in order to bring the oil to a temperature that will allow the beeswax to melt, we've had to boil the water in the pot, which we can now turn off. The beeswax that we put in originally has melted completely, and now that I'm looking at it, I think we should add a little bit more. So I'm just going to grab another, I'd say this is about a tablespoon grated, if you press it down into the tablespoon. We're going to throw it into the wax and oil mixture, and then we'll continue to stir until the beeswax has melted in with the oils. At this point, you'll want to make sure that you don't get too close because the water is steaming. It's quite hot. The oil mixture, of course, if it's hot enough to melt. Wax is also incredibly hot, so you want to make sure that you're either wearing protective gloves or you've got something kind of blocking your hands from the heat. So as we can see here, the additional beeswax that I've added has melted in, and I'm actually just going to dump the rest in here. I've got probably about a teaspoon more grated wax, which I'm just going to put in there. Like I said, I do like my salves to be quite firm. If you don't like your salves to be firm, you can always add less wax. We'll just give that a second to melt. Now, the final step with this salve is going to be adding essential oils. For my own use, which is what this salve is for, I have picked 3 oils. I've got tea tree oil, which is an excellent medicinal oil. It's got healing qualities and it's an antiseptic. Most of the time, I do put tea tree oil into my salve, sometimes more than other times. It depends entirely on what the salve is for. Because I want this as a healing salve, I am going to add a bit more. So now that everything is melted together, I'm going to carefully pull my measuring cup out of my water. You'll see the beautiful golden color of all the wax and the oils mixed together. The essential oil should always be added last, and you should make sure that you have let your mixture cool down a little bit, which we will do here. What you see here is the liquid form of your mixture. The oils and the wax are all mixed together. They will, if cooled properly, the oils and the wax will not separate, so that's what we are aiming for. So my first oil that I've got here is tea tree oil. I'm going to add a generous amount. I've got about 15 drops of tea tree oil in there. Because I really want this salve to be healing. The next oil that I'm going to add is lavender essential oil, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with. Lavender is one of the most popular essential oils to use for healing, for beauty products. It has calming properties. It also is a really good healing oil. It's got disinfecting properties. And it just smells really nice and can help mask the sometimes unpleasant odor of the tea tree oil. So again, I've got probably between 10 and 15 drops in there. You can put in more or less depending on what you prefer. And then third, I've got a small bottle of rosemary oil here, which is a really good purifying oil that kind of also helps cut the scent of the tea tree oil, which can be quite strong in a salve like this. And the rosemary oil, I just want to add a couple of drops into my mixture for purifying purposes, and again to help with the smell of the tea tree oil, which some people can find unpleasant. Now I'm going to make sure to mix my mixture really well here to make sure that the oils are all the way through. You can always smell your mixture. That's a good indication of whether you need to add more or less essential oils. The beeswax does help with the smell as well. It's got quite a pleasant flowery aroma with the tea tree, rosemary, and lavender essential oils. Once you're satisfied that everything is mixed, you're going to pour it into a container. For the salve, I have 2 small glass jars, which I have sanitized with boiling water. I'm going to carefully pour my hot mixture into the jars until it's about a centimeter from the top. It looks like I've got the perfect amount for 2 jars here, so I am just going to fill those both up. And as you can see, it's still clear. Now, some people prefer to chill their salves in the fridge, which makes them set faster. However, I have found that doing this also makes it a higher chance that the oil will separate from the solids, such as the wax and the solid coconut oil. So we are just going to let these sit here for a couple of hours at room temperature until they solidify. Once your salve has had a chance to cool and set, you'll see that it's got a beautiful golden opaque color. It's cracked slightly at the top where it has done setting, and if you touch it, you'll see that it's the perfect consistency for rubbing into your skin. If you enjoyed this, make sure you check out my website, Witchy Business, at witchybusiness.com. Thank you so much for watching.